It all started because I forgot to book a hotel. Not the most exciting way to begin a story, I know, but that one mistake led to the most unexpected night of my life. My best friend Eli was getting married, and I was flying in for the weekend. Small beach town, big fancy wedding, the kind where you can practically smell the money. I hadn't seen Eli in a while. Life had taken us in different directions, but when he called and asked me to be there, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. When I landed and checked my phone, I realized the local hotels were either fully booked or charging more than my rent. I texted Eli in a panic, and he responded way too casually. "No worries, you can crash at my parents' place. My brother's in town too. He's got the guest room, but you can take my old one." His brother, Liam. Even just reading his name made my stomach flip a little. I hadn't seen Liam in years. Not since he was 19 and I was 21. Back when he was the annoyingly hot younger brother, who always walked around shirtless, dripping pool water across the tile floors and pretending not to know he was being watched. I'd had a thing for him. I mean, who didn't? But I never acted on it. He was Eli's little brother, off limits in the most obvious, unspoken way. Still, the memory of him lingered longer than it should have. So when I pulled up to the old beach house that Friday night, I wasn't prepared to open the door and see him standing there in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing gym shorts and nothing else, his hair messy like he'd just woken up from a nap. "Hey," he said, giving me a lazy smile. I froze. "Wow. Liam, you got taller," he grinned, "and you got more awkward." Still charming, I see. He handed me a beer from the fridge like we were old friends, and for a second, it felt like no time had passed. But everything about him was different now. He moved like he knew people were watching, confident in that quiet, dangerous kind of way. We hung out for a bit, just the two of us. Eli was still out dealing with some pre-wedding chaos, and their parents were apparently staying with relatives down the street. That left the house empty, weirdly quiet for how full it used to be. Liam and I ended up on the back patio, drinking beers and watching the ocean in the distance. The salty breeze made everything feel a little unreal. "You remember that time Eli tried to jump off the roof into the pool?" he asked. "Yeah, you screamed louder than he did." He laughed, leaning back in the chair, and for a second, I let myself look. Really look. His chest, his arms, the lazy way his fingers curled around the neck of his beer. "You still with that guy?" "What was his name, Marcus?" he asked, glancing over at me. "No, that ended a while ago." He nodded slowly. "Didn't seem like your type, honestly." I blinked. "And what is my type?" He met my eyes, held my gaze just a second longer than necessary. "Not him." The air felt suddenly thick, my chest tight in a way I didn't expect. Eventually, we went inside. I said I was tired, which was a lie. I just didn't trust myself to keep sitting there with him, pretending I wasn't completely thrown off by how different he felt now. More grown up. More something. Eli's old room was exactly how I remembered it. Posters on the walls, half a broken lava lamp, sheets that probably hadn't been changed in a decade. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling, telling myself to chill. Then, maybe an hour later, I heard the door creak open. "Hey," Liam whispered, stepping inside. I sat up. "Everything okay?" He hesitated in the doorway, shirtless, his hand scratching the back of his neck. "I can't sleep. The guest room bed's killing my back. You mind if I crash in here with you?" I blinked. "There's one bed." He gave a lopsided smile. "You scared I'll steal the covers?" "No," I said quickly. "It's fine, yeah." "Sure." He closed the door behind him, and my heart was already racing before he even climbed in. The mattress shifted under his weight as he climbed in beside me. The room wasn't big, and the bed definitely wasn't made for two grown men, especially not ones with a history like ours. Still, he laid down like it was nothing, pulling the covers up and resting one arm behind his head. I turned to face the wall, trying not to let my mind spiral. I could feel the heat radiating off his body even though we weren't touching. Every shallow breath I took felt too loud, too obvious. "You always breathe this heavy?" he mumbled behind me, teasing. I groaned. Sorry. I'll try to suffocate quieter. He laughed, the sound deep and low. I'm just messing with you. We fell quiet again. The kind of silence that hums. I don't know how long we laid there like that, the space between us shrinking with every second. I could feel the tension settling over us like a second blanket. Warm, heavy, unspoken. You know, he said suddenly, voice low. You never answered my question earlier. What question? What your type is. I didn't respond right away. I could feel him watching me, even in the dark. I don't know, I finally said. People who don't ask weird questions in the middle of the night? He chuckled again, this time quieter, closer. I hadn't realized he'd moved, but now I could feel the subtle shift of the mattress, the way his breath hit the back of my neck in tiny bursts. Come on, he murmured. You've got a type. Everyone does. I turned to face him. Barely. Just enough to see the outline of his face in the dim light from the hallway spilling through the cracked door. And what about you? I asked. You dating anyone? Nah. Why not? He shrugged one shoulder, still resting back against the pillow. Nobody interesting lately. I watched him for a second, unsure if I was imagining the way his eyes lingered, the way his voice softened. This didn't feel like two guys just catching up. This felt like something else. You used to avoid me, he said suddenly. What? Back when we were younger, every time I came into the room, you'd leave. Or you'd barely talk to me, thought I pissed you off or something. My heart thudded. I hadn't expected him to bring that up. I didn't avoid you. You did. I sighed, turning onto my back, staring at the ceiling like it held the right words. You were Eli's little brother? I said. I didn't want to be weird. Weird how? I looked over at him. He was still watching me, his gaze steady now, serious. You know how? I said, voice quiet. He didn't respond right away. The air felt thick between us, like something had just cracked open, and neither of us knew what would come out. I used to think about it too, he said. That stopped my breath cold. Think about what? You, I don't know. Stuff. He laughed nervously, rubbing his hand across his jaw. God, I sound like a teenage girl. No, you don't, I said quickly, probably too quickly. Sometimes I'd walk around shirtless on purpose, he admitted, his voice lower now, like a confession. Just to see if you'd look. I didn't say anything. What could I say to that? And you did, he added, a small smirk on his lips. I covered my face with both hands, groaning into them. Okay, can we not? Why not? He asked, nudging me lightly with his knee under the covers. You looked. I looked. What's the big deal? I peeked at him through my fingers. Because you were supposed to be straight. He raised an eyebrow. Supposed to be? Yeah, Eli always said. Eli doesn't know everything. We stared at each other in the dim light. My chest felt too tight, like the room was suddenly smaller, the bed too warm. I'm not trying to make things weird, he said finally, his voice softer now. I don't know. I liked having you around, and when you stopped coming around, it sucked. I didn't stop because of you, I said quickly. It was just easier. He nodded slowly, like he understood, like he'd felt it too. The silence returned, but it wasn't awkward now. It was loaded, heavy with everything we hadn't said for years. Then he shifted closer, not dramatically, not in some sudden move, just enough that our arms brushed, just enough that his leg rested lightly against mine under the sheets. I didn't pull away. He didn't speak again, and neither did I. We just laid there, inches apart, hearts probably beating the same erratic rhythm. And at some point, without either of us acknowledging it. We both fell asleep like that. Warm, close, quiet. When I woke up in the morning, everything had changed. I woke up to sunlight creeping through the blinds and the unmistakable pressure of someone beside me. It took my brain a few seconds to catch up. Where I was. Who was next to me? What had happened last night? Then I felt it. His legs still resting against mine under the covers, our arms nearly touching. Liam hadn't moved much, and neither had I. We were still tangled in that not quite intentional way, the kind of closeness you can't pretend didn't happen. I turned my head slightly. He was on his side, breathing softly, his lips parted just enough to make him look peaceful. His bare chest rose and fell in slow, steady rhythms. There was something about seeing him like that, in the quiet morning light, that made everything from the night before feel more real. Too real. I should have gotten up. Should have rolled away, slipped out of bed, done anything to put space between us, but I didn't. I just laid there, watching him like an idiot, my chest tightening with every second. Eventually, his eyes fluttered open. He blinked a few times, squinting against the light, before looking over at me. "Hey," he said, voice rough from sleep. "Morning," I replied, barely above a whisper. He didn't move. Neither did I. "You always stare at people when they sleep?" he asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. "No," I said, "just you." That made him laugh, and I hated how good it felt to make him smile like that. He stretched, his arm brushing mine as he shifted onto his back. The cover slipped down just a little, revealing more of his chest. I looked away quickly, pretending it didn't affect me. "Did I hog the bed?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "No, you actually stayed on your side." "Mostly," he smirked. "Mostly?" I rolled my eyes. "You're the one who climbed in, remember?" "Yeah," he said, his voice quieting. "Thanks for letting me." For a moment, the room was still again. Just the soft sound of birds outside, and the ocean somewhere in the distance. Then he sat up, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. "I should shower. We've got a big day ahead." "Right. Wedding stuff." He stood and stretched again, arms reaching above his head, back muscles flexing with the motion. I had to look away. Again, as he headed toward the door, he paused and turned back. "You want the bathroom first?" I shook my head. "Nah. Go ahead." He nodded, then disappeared down the hall. As soon as the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. My heart was pounding for no good reason, my skin warm like I'd been standing in the sun too long. What the hell was happening? The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Liam showered, then I did. We had breakfast with Eli and the rest of the family, pretending like we hadn't shared a bed all night. He didn't act weird, and I tried not to either, but every time our eyes met, something lingered. We spent the afternoon helping Eli set up for the rehearsal dinner. There were tables to arrange, lights to hang, the usual chaos that comes with a wedding. It was busy enough that I didn't have to think about Liam. Until we were alone again. It happened after dinner. Most of the family had gone back to their hotels or were upstairs crashing early. I came downstairs looking for my phone charger and found Liam in the kitchen, shirtless again, drinking water from the faucet like he lived there. "You know cups exist, right?" I said, leaning in the doorway. He turned, smiling. "Why dirty one when I've got a perfectly good mouth?" My brain short-circuited for half a second before I rolled my eyes. "You're impossible." He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You're late. Thought you were ghosting me." "I was avoiding you, actually," I said. "You're too much." He stepped closer, a playful glint in his eyes. "Too much for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Don't test me, Liam." "Or what?" He was close now, not touching me, but close enough to feel the heat off his skin. the kind of close that made it hard to focus. I swallowed hard. I don't even know what this is. Whatever you're doing. I'm not doing anything, he said, voice softer now. Unless you want me to. I should have shut it down, should have made a joke or stepped back. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at him, really looked at him, and let the silence stretch between us. What if I said I do? I asked. He tilted his head slightly, like he hadn't expected me to say that. But he didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied. Then he reached up and touched my wrist. Just that, a light, deliberate touch. I've been waiting a long time for you to say that. I've been waiting a long time for you to say that. The words hit harder than they should have. I stared at him, trying to process the weight of what he just said. There wasn't a trace of sarcasm in his voice. None of that usual playfulness he leaned on to keep things from getting too real. Just honesty, plain and naked between us. How long is a long time? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes flicking down to the floor, then back up to me. Since before I even knew what to do with it, the kitchen suddenly felt too small, too still. I leaned back against the doorway, needing the support. You were, what, 17? I asked. 18, he said quickly. But yeah, back then, I thought I was just curious, thought it would go away. And did it? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. You're standing here, aren't you? I didn't know what to do with that. 1,000 thoughts flooded my brain, but not one of them translated into anything coherent. So I just stood there, breathing shallowly, trying to remember what normal felt like. I didn't mean to make things weird, he added. If this is too much, just say so. It's not that, I said. It's just, this is a lot. I know. He stepped back a bit, giving me space. I get it. We stood there in silence for a moment, the tension still thick, but different now, softer. Not a threat, just an open door neither of us had ever walked through. He grabbed his water bottle and started to head for the stairs. I'm gonna crash early. Big day tomorrow. I nodded slowly, still leaning in the doorway like my legs didn't fully work. Yeah, I'll be up in a bit. He paused halfway to the stairs and turned. You can still sleep in Eli's room. If you want, I'll stay in mine. The offer was genuine, respectful. It made my chest hurt a little. I'll let you know, I said. He nodded, then disappeared up the stairs. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after that, just listening to the soft sounds of the house settling, the occasional creak of wood, the hum of the refrigerator, my own pulse in my ears. By the time I finally went upstairs, the hallway was dark. I passed Eli's old room. The door was cracked, the bed untouched. I kept walking. Liam's door was closed. I stood outside it for a second, unsure why. Just my hand on the frame, my head spinning with everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. Then I knocked. It was barely audible, a soft little tap, but within seconds the door opened. Liam stood there shirtless again. This was clearly his default state, his hair damp from a shower, a pair of mesh shorts hanging low on his hips. I started, but nothing came out after that. He stepped aside, wordlessly, letting me in. His room smelled faintly of soap and laundry. The overhead light was off, just the warm glow of a bedside lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked up at me. You don't have to explain, he said quietly. I'm glad you're here. I hesitated for a beat, then sat down next to him. Close, but not touching. My knee brushed his, and neither of us moved. So, what does this mean? I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear the answer. He took a deep breath. It means I'm tired of pretending I don't want you. My heart was doing backflips in my chest, but I kept my face still. You said you waited, I said. Why didn't you ever say anything? He looked down at his hands. You were always out of reach. Either dating someone or just Gone. I figured if I said something, I'd just push you away. Or worse, you'd laugh. I wouldn't have laughed, I said. I know that now. He glanced at me. But back then, I was just some dumb teenager with a crush. I smiled slightly. You were very annoying. You loved it. Maybe. The moment hung there again. The space between us almost charged now, like we were on the edge of something we couldn't undo. You still think this is a bad idea? He asked, quieter now. I looked at him, really looked at him. No, I said. I think it's the first time something actually makes sense. He moved closer, just a few inches. His thigh pressed against mine now, firm and warm. He didn't touch my face or lean in like in a movie. He just looked at me, his eyes searching, waiting. So I did it. I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, tentative, the kind of kiss you give when you're trying to see if something is real, if it's safe. His lips were soft, a little hesitant at first, but then they responded, pressing into mine with just enough certainty to make me feel it all the way in my chest. When we pulled apart, I kept my forehead against his for a second. I've been thinking about that longer than I should admit, I whispered. He smiled. Same. We didn't talk much after that. Just crawled into bed again, the same bed, this time facing each other. No space between us. His hand found mine under the covers, fingers lacing together like it had always been this way. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep, feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the quiet sounds of someone moving around downstairs. For a second, I forgot where I was. The sheets were unfamiliar. The light was different. And then I turned over and saw Liam's pillow, still warm from where his head had been. He was already up. I sat there for a moment, the events of last night washing over me like a tide. The closeness, the kiss, the way he'd held my hand under the covers like it was the most natural thing in the world. It still didn't feel real. There was a tiny part of me, the part that always prepared for disappointment, that wondered if he'd wake up, regret everything, and act like it never happened. But the larger part of me, the one that had spent years trying not to think about him, had felt something shift last night. And I didn't think it was one-sided. I pulled on the same clothes from yesterday and padded quietly down the stairs. Liam was in the kitchen, still shirtless. Of course, making eggs with one hand and sipping coffee with the other. When he saw me, he smiled like nothing about the world had changed. But it had. "Morning, sleeper," he said, voice casual but warm. "You beat me up," I replied, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, well, I figured one of us should act like we're not in a rom-com," I laughed, a short surprise sound. "Wow, you're starting strong." He slid a mug of coffee toward me. "Thought I'd make up for stealing your side of the bed." "You didn't," I said, taking a sip. "You just took up more than your fair share." He leaned on the counter and grinned. "You could have kicked me out. Don't think I wanted to." His smile softened, and he looked at me for a long beat. Not joking, not teasing, just there. "I'm glad you stayed," he said. "Me too." We ate breakfast in a weird mix of silence and familiarity, like something had finally clicked into place, and neither of us wanted to push it too hard. Later that morning, Eli barged in, all nerves and last-minute wedding stress, barking orders like a man on the edge. We both snapped into action, Liam adjusting chairs outside, me running through the checklist with Eli's fiancé. It was a full-blown production, but underneath all the chaos, there was this constant hum in my chest, this quiet knowing. Every time I caught Liam's eye from across the backyard, every time our hands brushed when we passed decorations or moved a table, it was there. That night, after the rehearsal dinner, the house slowly emptied again. People left in clusters. Aunts, cousins, Eli and his fiancée disappearing to separate places, keeping up tradition or superstition or whatever it was. And just like that, we were alone again. It didn't feel like the first night anymore. There was no awkwardness, no nervous wondering about what we were doing. It felt like we'd already decided, and now we were just letting it happen. We didn't talk much. Just ended up back in Liam's room, the door clicking shut behind us like punctuation on a sentence we were already finishing. I sat on the bed, back against the headboard, and watched him change into a fresh t-shirt and sweatpants. It was such a normal moment, something I'd probably seen a dozen times in the past, but now it had a completely different weight. "You good?" he asked, tossing his clothes in a chair. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." He raised an eyebrow. "Thinking's dangerous." "I know, that's why I don't usually do it." He smiled, then crossed the room and sat next to me. Close again. Closer than necessary. "You regretting anything?" he asked. I shook my head. Not even a little. He seemed to relax at that. Leaned back against the headboard beside me, his arm brushing mine. "You know what's weird?" he said after a minute. "What?" "I've had so many dates, random flings, whatever, and none of it felt like this. Like something actually mattered." I looked at him. "Is that what this is? Something that matters?" He turned toward me, and for once there was no smirk, no deflection. Just his eyes, clear and steady. I think it always did. I just didn't know what to do about it. I reached over and took his hand again, like I had the night before. His fingers laced through mine automatically. "Then let's just not overthink it," I said. "Let's just see where it goes." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I like that." We sat like that for a while. No rush to move, no need to fill the space. It felt calm in a way that surprised me, like all the tension from the years before had burned off, and all that was left was the quiet truth between us. Eventually, we slid down under the covers again, this time with no distance between us. His arm wrapped around my waist. My hand rested against his chest. The kind of closeness that didn't need a label yet. It just needed time. Before I drifted off, I heard him whisper, "I always wondered what this would feel like." And all I could think was, "Me too." The morning of the wedding started with yelling. Not from Liam, not from me, but from Eli's mom downstairs. Trying to wrangle tablecloths and misplaced flower arrangements, and an uncle who apparently didn't understand formal dress code. I blinked awake to the sound of it all, disoriented, warm, and still very much wrapped in Liam. His arm was slung across my waist, his breath steady against the back of my neck. We hadn't moved much during the night, and I hadn't dreamt anything I could remember, but my body felt rested in a way it hadn't in months, maybe years. I turned my head slightly to glance at him. His eyes were closed, lips parted, lashes curled against his cheeks, still completely unaware of the wedding madness brewing just a floor below. I could have stayed like that for hours, but eventually the guilt kicked in. Or maybe the realism. This wasn't our house. This wasn't some hotel on a random trip. We were in his parents' home, his brother's wedding day. We couldn't hide in bed all morning like two teenagers ditching school. So I carefully rolled out of bed, trying not to wake him. I didn't succeed. His hand caught my wrist just as I was sliding out from under the sheets. "Where are you going?" he mumbled, eyes still closed. "Downstairs," I whispered. "It's wedding chaos already." 5 more minutes. "Liam." He tugged me gently back toward him, pressing his face into the pillow with a groan. I laughed softly. "You're worse than me in the morning." "I'm better," he said into the pillow. "Just more selective about when I move." Eventually, I managed to pull away, and he sat up too, rubbing his eyes and running a hand through his messy hair. We got dressed quietly, but there was an ease to it. No awkwardness, no second guessing. Every little glance, every light touch as we passed each other in the room. It all felt easy, natural, like we'd been doing this for a long time and just hadn't noticed. Downstairs, the house was a storm of movement, caterers coming in and out, decorations still being adjusted. A bridesmaid crying in the hallway for a reason no one could explain. Eli was nowhere to be seen. I spotted Liam's mom first, arms full of folded tablecloths, jaw set like she'd already been awake since before sunrise. "Hey," she said, looking between us. "Did you guys sleep okay?" Liam nodded. "Yeah, all good." She didn't ask anything else, just thrust a pile of napkins into my hands and started rattling off instructions. For the next couple of hours, we were just two guys helping out. Two brothers, friends. Nothing more. No one looked twice. No one seemed to suspect a thing. And yet, the whole time, I felt Liam's presence like a low thrum under my skin. Every time we caught each other's eye across the backyard, or bumped shoulders setting up a table, it sent a little charge through me. At one point, I caught him watching me while I adjusted the gift table, his expression unreadable, calm, quiet, like he was letting himself look without hiding it anymore. And for the first time, I didn't look away. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. The ceremony was beautiful, Eli cried, which surprised no one. His fiancée looked like she'd just stepped off the cover of a bridal magazine. And for 30 minutes, it felt like everything in the world had paused for them. At the reception, things got louder. Music, dancing, speeches that ran too long, and toasts that got a little too honest after the champagne kicked in. Liam and I kept our distance in the way people do when they know too much is at stake. But every now and then, I'd feel his hand brush mine under the table, or his knee knock against mine while we laughed at something Eli's cousin said. We were figuring it out. Later that night, long after the cake had been cut and the sparklers waved and the guests started disappearing into the night, I found Liam sitting on the back steps of the house, nursing a beer and watching the moonlight shimmer off the ocean. I sat beside him without saying anything. He didn't look over, just passed me the second bottle he'd brought. "I miss this place," he said after a while. "Didn't realize how much. You think you'll come back more?" "Maybe. Depends." "On?" He looked over finally, and there it was again. That steady, unreadable look. The kind that could either wreck you or anchor you. "On if you're here," he said. My heart gave a slow, deliberate thud. "You know this thing," I said, gesturing between us. "It's not exactly convenient." "I know. We live in different cities. I know. I don't even know what we are yet." He nodded. "Me neither." I took a sip of the beer, staring out at the water. "But I want to find out." He didn't say anything right away. Then, slowly, he reached over and took my hand. Interlaced our fingers like he'd done the last 2 nights. Me too. We sat like that for a long time, our hands linked in the dark, the sound of the waves filling the silence between us. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't some fairy tale promise. It was just two people choosing to stay close. For now, for tonight, and that felt like enough. The next morning was quiet in that special way, only the day after a big event can be. The house was half empty, and the few people still around were either hungover or emotionally spent. There was a calmness to it, like everything had exhaled. Liam and I made coffee in the kitchen, moving around each other without speaking much. Not because anything was wrong, but because the silence between us had shifted. It wasn't full of tension anymore. It just existed, comfortable. I stood at the sink, rinsing 2 mugs, when he came up behind me and rested his hand on my lower back. Not possessive, not urgent, just there. I didn't turn around, just stood there a moment, letting it settle. "So," he said finally, his voice low, close to my ear, "what happens now?" I shut off the water and dried my hands, turned to face him. "I go back home," I said. "You do too." He nodded slowly. "And then?" I gave him a tired smile. "We find out if this thing works when we're not sneaking around in your parents' beach house." He didn't look away. "You want it to?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I do." He let out a breath, the kind you let out when you've been holding something in for too long. "Okay, me too." There wasn't some big, dramatic kiss in that moment. No fireworks. No slow fade to black. Just a look. His, mine, and the shared understanding that something had started. Something neither of us wanted to leave behind. The next few hours were a blur of packing, saying goodbye, and pretending we hadn't just undone years of silent tension with 2 nights in the same bed. His mom hugged me like she always had. Eli clapped me on the back and told me to call more often. No one suspected anything had changed, but it had. Liam didn't walk me to my car. He came out last, just as I was tossing my bag in the trunk. I leaned against the door and waited, unsure if we were doing some awkward half goodbye or something else. He stood in front of me, hands in his pockets. "I hate this part," he said. "Me too." A pause. "Can I see you next weekend?" he asked. "You're already planning next weekend?" He shrugged. "Might have been thinking about it all day." I smirked. "I could make that work." "Good." He stepped closer. We were half shadowed by the garage wall, the rest of the family still inside. He reached for my hand and gave it a quick squeeze. Not long enough to draw attention, but long enough to say something real. "I'll text you when I get home," he said. "Promise?" "Yeah," he said, more serious now. "I promise." I got in the car and backed out of the driveway. When I glanced at the rearview mirror, he was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching me go. The first few weeks were weird. In the best way. We texted constantly. Stupid things. Memes. Inside jokes that hadn't even existed before. I'd wake up to photos of his messy bed, coffee cups, and once, his dog curled up in a blanket with a caption that read, "He misses you." And then the first visit happened. I took the train down to his city. He met me at this station wearing a denim jacket and that familiar smirk like he hadn't been thinking about this all week, even though I knew he had. We didn't even make it back to his place before he kissed me. It was outside a bagel shop, of all places. Mid-morning, people everywhere. I don't think he even thought about it. He just looked at me, like he'd been waiting all morning, and then leaned in and kissed me like it was the only logical thing to do. And just like that, we weren't a secret anymore. The next few months passed in this fast, warm blur. He came up to visit me. I went down to see him. We met each other's friends. We fought over what to order for dinner. We figured out how to exist outside of the bubble that weekend had created. And it worked. Not perfectly. Not without awkward moments or insecurities or old habits surfacing. But it worked. One night, we were lying on his couch, a movie playing in the background, and he looked over at me, that same unreadable look in his eyes. "You know I don't say this kind of thing much," he started. I muted the TV. "Go on." "I think I was always looking for something like this," he said. "I just didn't know it was you." That was the night I said it, the thing we hadn't said yet. "I love you." He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "I love you too." It didn't feel like a milestone, it just felt true. It's been almost a year since that weekend. It feels strange to say that out loud, like the clock somehow moved faster without me noticing. But everything's different now, not in a dramatic, movie-ending kind of way. Just in a real one. I live in Liam's city now. The move wasn't planned. Not really. I didn't pack up my life with some grand romantic gesture. I just visited enough weekends in a row that one day it made more sense to stay. And he never asked me to, which made it easier to say yes when I finally did. We got a small apartment together a few months back. Nothing fancy. A 2-bedroom that turned into a 1-bedroom when we realized we never actually used the second one for sleeping. It's cluttered with our stuff, full of mismatched furniture, and smells like coffee and takeout most of the time. But it's ours. He still walks around shirtless more than he should. Still teases me about how I load the dishwasher wrong. Still bumps my shoulder every time we pass in the kitchen like we're stuck in some slow-motion loop of all the old patterns that somehow never got old. Some nights, when I'm sitting on the couch watching him move around the apartment, half distracted, shirt hanging off one shoulder, humming some off-key song while he cooks, I feel this stupid, quiet swell in my chest. I don't say anything. I don't need to. Because now, he looks up from the stove and says things like, "You're staring," or "Do I have something on my face?" or "You're gonna wear out your eyes if you keep looking at me like that." And I'll just shrug and say, "Can't help it." And he'll come over, drop down beside me, and rest his head on my shoulder like he always knew it was supposed to go this way. We're not perfect. We still have fights, still get on each other's nerves, still figure out how to be two different people sharing one life. But every time we argue, every time we pull away, we find our way back. Because when something is built slowly, over years of glances and distance and unspoken tension, it doesn't break easily. It bends, it adjusts, it learns how to last. Sometimes we talk about that weekend like it was a dream, like we stumbled into something we didn't fully understand but didn't want to lose. And sometimes we don't talk about it at all. We just lie in bed, his hand in mine, the window cracked open, the sound of the city outside, and we breathe together, quiet, easy, the way it's always been. And the way I think it's always going to be.